Welcome to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. Vague language in the Farm Bill 7 years ago opened the door to a flood of products infused with THC derived from hemp plants. It created a nearly $30 billion industry that some tribes embraced. The bill that just reopened the federal government shut down that industry. We'll hear from tribal hemp producers about what that means for them. We'll also talk about options as the door closes on federal subsidies for health insurance. That's all coming up after the news.
This is National Native News. I'm Antonia Gonzalez. A Native American woman and her family are thankful that she's not detained and potentially deported by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. Brian Bull of Buffalo's Fire has the story.
On Veterans Day, 24-year-old Letitia Jacobo completed a short sentence at the Polk County Jail in Des Moines, Iowa, for a traffic infraction. She was supposed to have been released at midnight, but things took an odd turn.
I don't know how to explain. I don't know how to put it in words. It was shocking. I was like, how do I have an ICE hold and I'm Native American? It was just weird. It was just crazy.
Jacobo's mom, Erica Burns, learned that her daughter was placed under an ICE detainer and was worried. Both women are members of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community and therefore legal U.S. citizens. Jacobo's aunt, Maria Nunez, said her sister sprung into action.
Being the holiday that day, we couldn't do much, and here on her reservation side of the family was jumped on the media and reached out to everyone and whoever we could, because we didn't want her removed and sent to we don't know where.
Nunez says the tribal police chief called into corrections officials to vouch for Jacobo's citizenship, and an investigator learned that another inmate at the jail had the same last name as Jacobo. A spokesman for the Polk County Sheriff's Office said it was all a clerical mix-up, and staff have been talked to about preventing repeat errors. Again, Letitia Jacobo.
I'm very thankful for having family members and people out here, because if I didn't, who knows what would have happened. I would have just unknowingly went to ICE custody. So it would have been a scary moment.
Many Native people and supporters are calling this a case of racial profiling, and Jacobo is weighing a lawsuit. For now, though, she plans to celebrate the holiday season with her family. Maria Nunez says she's happy that her niece is safe.
I'm just so proud to be Native American and have all the love and support in knowing that we're all ready to fight and protect what's ours.
Since the Trump administration ramped up its immigration crackdown, tribes have complained of ICE confronting their enrolled citizens. Many have issued guidance on their rights and what documentation to present if detained. Neither the Des Moines ICE office nor the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community returned requests for comment. For National Native News, I'm Brian Bull.
The Colorado River has long been considered a lifeline for the Southwest. As KJZZ's Gabriel Pietrorazio reports, one Arizona tribe is now acknowledging the waterway as having the same rights and legal protections as tribal members.
The Colorado River Indian tribes, or CRIT, would not say whether it was unanimous, but the 9 council members still voted to recognize personhood for the namesake river under tribal law. It comes at a pivotal time when sustained drought threatens this natural resource CRIT considers a living entity, running parallel to the tribe's nearly 300,000-acre reservation along the California border. This measure also tasks tribal councils to take the Colorado River's needs under consideration amid an uncertain future on 2 fronts: climate change and ongoing water negotiations. For National Native News, I'm Gabriel Pietrorazio.
Tribal leaders from across the country are gathered in Seattle for the National Congress of American Indians annual convention and marketplace. Leaders are tackling top issues facing their communities, from economic development, education, climate, to language and culture. Additionally, a youth convention is taking place. Both gatherings continue through Friday. I'm Antonia Gonzalez.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Support by AARP, whose Family Caregiver Resource Guide is available to caregivers by calling 877-333-5885 or at aarp.org/caregiver-resources. Support by Drummond Woodsum, a full-service law firm whose nationally recognized tribal nations practice provides services to tribal nations and their enterprises and to companies that do business with tribes across the country. More at dwmlaw.com.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
This is Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. The future of the nation's lucrative hemp industry is in limbo after text inserted at the last minute into the bill that ended the federal government shutdown closed what many consider a regulation loophole. Tribes like Lac du Flambeau in Wisconsin have cashed in on that loophole. The tribe's retail store sells hemp-derived products with THC, like drinks, tinctures, edibles, and more. Today on our show, we'll get a reading on the new reality for the tribal hemp industry. But first, we'll spend time talking about another change that's coming after the government shutdown. The Affordable Care Act tax credits are set to expire at the end of the year. If that happens, it will mean steep increases in health care costs for millions of people, including some Native Americans. We'll look at how one clinic will be impacted by these changes. Listeners, please, you can join us with comments and your questions. Just call 1-800-996-2848, 1-800-996-2848. That number is also 1-800-99-NATIVE. We've got the phone lines open, and we are waiting for your call. Joining us now from the Reno Sparks Indian Colony in Nevada is Angie Wilson. She is the Tribal Health Director for Reno Sparks Indian Colony, and she is a citizen of the Pit River Tribe. Angie, good morning, and welcome to Native America Calling.
Good morning, Wakwesi. It's really a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you, Angie. Now, people who obtain subsidized insurance under the Affordable Care Act, they are weeks away from a potential spike in their premiums. What is the potential scenario for the patients you see?
Well, here at the Reno Sparks Tribal Health Center, we developed a tribal sponsorship program where we could actually pick up the cost of the health insurance premiums for federally recognized American Indians and Alaska Natives. The Reno Sparks Tribal Health Center is the largest tribal health program in the state of Nevada. We see about 5,500 patients. Some of those are direct-only patients, and some of those are obviously also eligible for purchase and referred care. So for us here at the clinic, we do what we can to make sure that they're not eligible for Medicaid. If they're not, and they have advanced premium tax credits or those health subsidies, that really helps us to be able to afford to purchase or sponsor their healthcare premiums here at the local level. Of course, creates access to care.
Sure. Now, are there higher percentages of Native people receiving health insurance subsidies in general? Do you have any of that data, especially there at your facility?
Not necessarily any data. I don't have that readily available, but there are folks that do qualify for the healthcare subsidies. And so when they're coming into the clinic, that's the very first thing that we're looking at. And of course, that depends on their individual status, what their income level looks like, what their tax bracket information may look like. So, but the real issue here is with having the federal subsidies, that definitely helps our tribal clinics to be able to afford the coverage of these healthcare premiums overall. So the news or, the current issues happening about those subsidies going away are a pretty big deal in tribal health, in our tribal health world.
Now, you helped establish the tribal health program in Nevada. And I'm interested now because, of course, the Affordable Care Act, it became law 15 years ago. And can you speak to how it has specifically benefited your patients at the Reno Sparks Indian Colony? Or maybe there's even a patient story you can share.
Sure, definitely. Well, yes, it's been some time now that the Affordable Care Act was implemented, even here in this state. We worked really hard to get a tribal sponsorship program up and going, and really part of that complexity, it was due to there was no pathway here for it. It was 10 years into the making before we had an established tribal sponsorship program here, which is, in our world was unacceptable. So, doing the hard advocacy and laying the groundwork for some changes were significant. Since the implementation of the tribal sponsorship program, we've been able to get so many folks on the exchange. And it's really important because what happens is when a member is able to have insurance through the health exchange, any type of service that they're getting here through the clinic that ends up getting referred out to specialty care, there's no additional out-of-pocket costs like deductibles, co-payments, or co-insurance, regardless of an American Indian's income. As long as that referral is happening from a tribal health clinic, those issues no longer apply, those additional costs. So it's a huge benefit for the clinics. It's a huge benefit for our patient population who see their primary health care here at the clinic. And because we have such a high urban Indian population, several of those folks do not qualify for what we would normally call purchase and referred care. So we have run into instances like that where we have folks who do not apply or do not qualify for purchase and referred care, but need surgery or need outpatient specialty care and would not be able to get it. They're over income for Medicaid. And we had a gentleman that we sponsored that was exactly in that boat. And so when we were able to get him coverage through the health exchange, any of the times he's coming here to the clinic, we can bill the insurance company that helps us to, continue with his care. And then when he would get his referral outside of the clinic, those costs would then be gone as well because he would not have to pay any additional copay insurance or deductibles.
Okay. And another feature of the tribal sponsorship programs like the one you have there is that for Native American people who aren't necessarily enrolled with the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, they could be from another state. In fact, they are eligible to receive insurance as well. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So it doesn't have to be just enrolled members of the Reno Sparks Indian Colony. It's any federally recognized American Indian or Alaska Native. They are eligible for both the federal and state-based health insurance exchange through the Affordable Care Act. And so this is really critical, especially for Indians that live in an area where they may not get local coverage through purchase and referred care. So American Indians, Alaska Natives, as long as they're getting care through their local tribal health clinic, all of those additional costs are gone. The other issue that is really great in the Affordable Care Act is open continuous enrollment for American Indians and Alaska Natives. So we as Indian people can pick a plan, stick to that plan. We can change a plan. There is no open enrollment period where we can only make that implementation or that purchase once a year. So American Indians do have choices and can come on or off the exchange as they need.
Okay, and there's also some financial features as well, because correct me if I'm wrong, but many tribes can then recoup the premium costs through increased reimbursement. Is that right?
Absolutely, and that's okay. There are two sides of this. One is a lot of the folks coming to our tribal health clinics that do not have health care coverage and are over income for Medicaid. A lot of times in Indian country, because we're only funded at 50% of the need from the Indian Health Services, folks like myself as tribal health directors, we have to consider what our options are to be able to generate third-party revenue to close that funding gap so our people can have good health care. So being able to purchase the insurance through the exchange for eligible American Indians is great, because a lot of those folks are coming to our clinics on a regular basis. So now that they come, instead of having no insurance, we can now recoup some of those costs from the private health insurance itself. The other side of that coin is the savings. So even though, we're paying for referrals outside of the clinic through purchase and referred care, now having healthcare coverage through the Affordable Care Act allows us to have those referrals without any additional cost to purchase and referred care other than just the health insurance premium. So it's a win-win on both sides. It generates third-party revenue, and it also helps us to stretch our purchase and referred care funds further.
Okay. And Angie, now going back to the credits for the subsidies, which are set to expire, the head of Medicare and Medicaid Services said over the weekend that the administration is considering extending the subsidies with some conditions to address what he says is fraud and waste. What do you know about this plan?
Well, I think that the fact that they're having the conversation is great. I think that lawmakers really do have to explore alternatives. They really need to look at ways of how this really does affect Americans across the board. These changes will affect premium cost. They will, also impact what future healthcare outcomes can look like and what that financial outcome to many people would be. So I think that these are all things that policymakers and stakeholders have to consider. What are the consequences when debating changes to healthcare laws and funding? I think that policy shifts really do have far-reaching implications, especially if alternatives do not really adequately address the affordability. Many folks will become uninsured. And of course, when that happens, there's an increased reliance on emergency services, and that puts a lot of pressure on state resources across the board. So I think that it's great that the conversations are happening. I think that this is a critical issue. And it's really, honestly, a critical issue even for Indian country. A lot of people don't see it that way. They figure, Indian Health Services just takes care of all of our care. But they only do that to an extent. And like I said, when we're only funded at 50% of the need, we really do have to rely on these types of programs and services and subsidies to be able to close the gap so our people have the care that they need. And so it's really critical that these discussions are happening across the board. So, I'm the hope that they continue, and we're certainly going to continue our advocacy for it.
Angie Wilson, Tribal Health Director for Reno Sparks Indian Colony, kicking off our conversation here today on Native America Calling. Short break, and we'll be right back. And the phone lines are open for listeners who would like to join us. 1-800-99-NATIVE. Like many tribes, the Shoshone-Bannock tribes signed a treaty, ceding land but keeping access to hunting. Maintaining those treaty rights is a constant battle for the Shoshone-Bannock and many other Native nations. We'll check in on challenges to hunting and fishing rights on the next Native America Calling.
The Indian Arts and Crafts Act protects authentic American Indian and Alaska Native artists and craftspeople and their art and craftwork. Under the Act, it is illegal to market art or craftwork misrepresented as American Indian, Indian, Native American, or Alaska Native made, or as the product of a particular Indian tribe. Reporting potential Act violations can be done at doi.gov/IACB or at 1-888-ART-FAKE. Support provided by Indian Arts and Crafts Board.
Thank you for tuning in today to Native America Calling. We're going to hear now about how the multi-billion-dollar hemp industry is impacted by a new ban on certain products. It was a surprise addition to the bill that just restarted the federal government. We have Native hemp business owners to talk about what this new regulation will mean for them. What is your tribe's relationship with hemp? Join us with a comment or question, 1-800-996-2848. That's also 1-800-99-NATIVE. Joining us now from Cambridge, Wisconsin is Rob Perro. He is the founder and president of the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association and the owner of Candigenous. He is a citizen of the Bad River Tribe. Rob, welcome back to Native America Calling.
What's up, Sean? Thanks for having me, man.
Great to have you, Rob. Also in Wisconsin, we have Candace Thompson. She is the director of cannabis operations for the Lac du Flambeau Band of Lake Superior Indians. She is also a Lac du Flambeau citizen. Candace, hello, and welcome to Native America Calling.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Great to have you. And joining us from Porcupine, South Dakota is Dion Holmquist. She is director of bio-based solutions at Makoche Agriculture Development. Dion, good morning and welcome to Native America Calling.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have all of you on the show today. Rob, I want to begin with you. You opened the very first independent Native-owned hemp company in the state of Wisconsin. Tell us now, how has the legal landscape changed since this bill passed?
It's completely flipped upside down, maybe 100 times. I think when everyone first started, it was to grow for CBD. And then there was the thought of, fiber and grain and sort of the traditional farmers coming along and looking at this as a large acre crop. And then COVID happened, the medicine will find its way, right? So the 0.3 rule at dry weight opened the door basically for THC to become legal federally through the 2018 Farm Bill. And then you saw, the Delta 8s, the Delta 9s, the Delta 10s, all these iterations of, as they would call it, intoxicating cannabinoids, but hemp-derived cannabinoids that were flooding the market because hemp, in that definition, was federally legal. So it's flipped upside down. What we also saw was, the incentives for the industrial side, more of the fiber grain side, have been cut as of last year by current administration cuts. And so, there's been there's no real incentives for either side, the industrial side now, and now specifically with this language change, it's definitely put a lot of fear out there on the market. So, it's crazy right now. I'll just say that.
Okay, it sure sounds like it, Rob. And I think it would help our listeners to get a little bit more background on some of the specifics of how hemp businesses have been able to operate. And you mentioned the 0.3 rule, and I believe that defines hemp under U.S. federal law. But give us a little more background for some of us that might not be as up to date on the industry as you are.
Yeah, so when you grow a cannabis plant, there's two definitions by federal law. If it's above 0.3, it is cannabis, or they would call it marijuana, which is not, a real specific or science word for the plant, but under 0.3 would be the definition of industrial hemp. So the way the Farm Bill was written when industrial hemp was basically made federally legal in 2018 was if at dry weight, when you harvest your crop and you send it off for testing, it tests below 0.3% of THC. It is a product for consumption. So you can move this product, distribute it across state lines to other, USDA hemp states, which, is a majority of them except for, I believe, Idaho. But it basically made it, interstate commerce and federally legal. But that was the only definition, was at that dry weight. And what that allowed, when people would take that plant and process it and isolate the different molecules and cannabinoids in it, you still had THC that you were now isolating, and whether that was in a powder form or an oil form or what have you. But what are you doing with this THC in its sort of molecule form? So that's what turned into the evolution of the Delta market and the intoxicating cannabinoids, or the hemp-derived cannabinoid market, which we see now with low-dose beverages and also high-dose beverages, and really a gray market that some states have adopted, and states like Wisconsin are looking to adopt, which is where I live now, because we don't have a medicinal program. So in essence, the plant and the medicine found its way through what they would call a loophole because it passed that first inspection at dry weight. But that opened the door to, obviously, interpretation.
All right, thanks, Rob. That's really helpful information. What's been your message now to others in the industry since this news of a THC ban has been issued?
I would say the message is if you've been doing business above board, and you're in a state where they have hemp regulation that currently exists, and they are supporting, the sale of, hemp-derived cannabinoids that are non-synthetic, right? You don't want to be taking something and doing something over and over again, and making something that's not authentic or natural to the plant. But that being said, if you're a business that's doing things above board and you're in a state where they do have their own hemp regulation and potential statutes that could protect you, do that R&D, figure out how you can get involved with about a year left to do what's right for your business and obviously what's right for the state. So the other aspect of that is if you are operating in sort of a gray state like a Wisconsin, and right now we have two bills that are on the floor, one that basically supports the federal ban, and one that puts intoxicating cannabinoids into a three-tier system, much like alcohol, is to just get involved, figure out what your options are, but know that people will go out of business with this, and there will be a lot more fear around sort of the mainstream taking on something that is now federally illegal. And it basically put, the hemp-derived cannabinoid market into the hands of either alcohol or, the cannabis market, which still marijuana and that definition above 0.3 is still federally illegal, but states can self-regulate that, which on top of that, tribes can self-regulate that as well. So tribes that already have hemp plans in order, and this will probably be a question for Candace or Dion, have that sovereignty to self-regulate and that civil regulatory authority. So getting involved and understanding how regulation works is, I think, critical if you're a business owner right now, because it's directly impacting you.
Okay, I want to bring Candace into the conversation in just a moment, but Rob, I have one more question for you. You mentioned earlier if you have been an above board business, a hemp business. What do you mean by that above board?
I mean a business that has standard SOPs and is doing quality control and testing. And I think this is a market where, you could go to a regulated state market where you have age gating for the product, where you have to be 21 and they, check your ID for that. And that these products have gone through some sort of compliance and testing to at least have a scannable code where you can actually see where this came from. But that is not a large majority of the market, unfortunately. And you can go to a gas station here in Wisconsin and have someone that is selling gas and also selling, THC at a high milligram dosage, and not knowing exactly where those products come from, how long they've been on the shelf for. So if that provides any sort of clarity to the fog that this industry has been in, maybe that helps.
Okay. Rob, it does sound a little bit like the Wild Wild West here with regard to some of these regulations and just the flexibility that some operators might have to run their businesses. Am I misreading?
No, you're not misreading. I think there's people that have been thriving in this gray market for quite a while because there really is no regulation or rules, depending upon the state that you're operating in. And with the direct-to-consumer component, that sort of being turned off as well because you can ship this across the country. Now, how do you know who you're shipping it to is going to be who they say they are when that package arrives, right? So, yes, I mean, I think what we've all wanted and what this is, sort of the writings on the wall is we need to regulate this product. And whether it's a hemp-derived THC, which is a natural offshoot of harvesting a hemp product, we should be able to take that THC, even at a low level, and create medicines that are, I would say, easier accessible because they're at a grocery store. They, let's say, are run through a distribution network or you're a self-distributor, but there's testing for these things and that they have gone through the proper protocols, just like anything else, that we would buy at the grocery store too. So I would say, again, for those that have been above board, and they're probably involved already, but there will be a number of businesses that will go away because There will be just a level of compliance and testing and just standard SOPs or GMPs that need to happen, and that probably needed to happen.
1-800-996-2848. Give us a call if you'd like to join this conversation. Maybe you have thoughts with regard to the hemp industry. Maybe your tribal community, there are hemp businesses there, and you have some insights to share. We'd like to hear them. 1-800-99-NATIVE. Candace Thompson is the Director of Cannabis Operations for the Lac du Flambeau Band of Lake Superior Indians, and she joins us now. And Candace, tell us more about the hemp products that Lac du Flambeau sells, and what is the status of those products given this new restriction?
Well, so we do have a retail CBD store, and it is mostly the hemp derivatives, and they actually are our top sellers, our drinks and our flour. But to go back, we do have a tribal ordinance that was submitted to the USDA, and per the U.S. Farm Bill, that gives us primary regulatory authority. So the business and our vendors both have to get licensed, and that's also reported to the hemp management database through the USDA.
How did Lac du Flambeau get into hemp-derived products?
Well, so this was a 2-year project before I started. The tribal ordinance was submitted or approved last September, August. And part of my job was to get this store open, and I did my research. I'm trying to stay as sustainable as I can. All of our vendors are from Wisconsin. And I was just doing market research, and that's what came up, because it's like Rob said, there's over 100 cannabinoids in the plant. It's just about education and destigmatizing the plant itself. Everyone associates it with THC, which is the only cannabinoid in that plant.
How about the tribal economy? What's been the impact?
Well, we have created a few jobs, but the main goal right now is to get in the cannabis industry and get experience in regulation for when it becomes medical marijuana. We do have a cannabis compliance officer and the regulatory authority in place.
And the regulatory authority, tell me more about the processes and all the personnel that are part of that authority to make sure that the products that you sell are what you want them to be and how they're advertised.
Well, we have about 3 people in those positions. We have to apply for a business sales license. So that includes everything from a business plan, EIN, background checks for the people running the business, including the vendors. And then, like I said, those are reported to the USDA hemp management database. And as far as what we sell at Little Pines, I don't start selling until I have those certificate of analysis, because I've been in other CBD stores around the state, and they have those QR codes and they don't go anywhere. It says error or page not found. So they don't even know what they're selling, whereas I know where they're coming from. I met all our vendors.
Candace, what are I'm even thinking of health risks here. If people can't, like these QR codes aren't even working. And I mean, this seems like it could be a serious public health concern if there are products and there's little to no information available on what's actually inside them.
Definitely. That's what I'm saying is nobody's out there regulating them. The state doesn't have that in place, but we at Lac du Flambeau do.
And what happens if you come across an operation that doesn't pass your regulatory framework? Do you assist them or provide any guidance for getting them on board, or do you just reject them?
Well, we haven't ran into that. I mean, we've explained, there were a few vendors that didn't want to do business with us because I explained that process, and they didn't want anything to do with it.
because the state doesn't require it.
What about are there any local regulations there that impact the way you folks do business? There any neighboring communities, or I'm even thinking about just how, where certain products can be consumed. Any impacts like that you want to talk about or we need to think about?
No, there isn't, but there was talk about decriminalizing on the reservation, but it's not really at the priority list of the police because it's not a problem. Yeah.
And the local community, how do they feel? And I mean, has this business been a good service for community members, or do you think most people would say that it's been a good service and provides not just a few jobs, but also a product that makes people's lives better?
Well, it's still being, like, people don't know that we're still open. Again, we still need to destigmatize the plant itself. They still associate it with marijuana. There's a difference. I tell customers all the time that, even though we're not allowed to give medical advice, there is studies that prove that it does have health benefits. And even with that, it creates hope for the community. It brings economic growth and jobs. And hopefully it brings pride to the community because we need it.
We're going to take another short break. We'll come back and we will continue this conversation with our guests. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry in the United States now, hemp, and this new ban on certain products is definitely changing how those businesses will operate going forward. And we're talking specifically about tribal hemp businesses on Native community or in Native land. So give us a call, anyone who'd like to join our conversation today, 1-800-996-2848.
Support from Clarkson Potter, publisher of Turtle Island, Foods and Traditions of the Indigenous Peoples of North America by Native American chef Sean Sherman. With ancestral and modern recipes, this cookbook showcases diverse foodways of the continent's regions.
Kaufman & Associates is a Native-owned and led consulting firm, supporting Native communities with culturally grounded solutions to shape Indigenous futures. More at kaufmaninc.com, KAUFFMANINC.com.
We're glad you're with us today on Native America Calling. Still plenty of time for anyone who would like to join our conversation about the future of the tribal hemp industry now that a new ban is in effect. Join us with comments and questions, 1-800-996-2848. You can also continue this conversation by commenting on our website and social media pages. Joining us now from Porcupine, South Dakota is Dion Holmquist, Director of Bio-Based Solutions at Makoche Agriculture Development. Dion, thank you again for coming on the show, and tell us about your role at Makoche and how your organization is involved in hemp.
Yeah, so as I said, I'm the director of the Bio-Based Solutions Initiative, and my role there is we're really focusing on alternative building and heating solutions, utilizing agricultural waste feedstock. And our primary waste feedstock that we're focusing on is industrial hemp. And so we're looking at making hemp houses, and if anybody's seen what Danny from the Lower Sioux and his crew are doing, we did recently purchase the same equipment so that we can really start working and focusing on life skills development, workforce development, and a lot of just echoing what Candace and Rob were saying, just the creating opportunities. And the heating piece of it, both of those, the heating and the housing, we're doing research on as well because there's just a lot of unknowns. And from a consumer safety standpoint, just exactly what the industry is trying to do in some way, shape, or forms. I shouldn't say exactly because there's some government stuff behind that. But for us, we have been blessed to become partners with South Dakota Mines and CSU Pueblo's Institute of Cannabis Research. And we're focused more on really the non-consumable side of things. And at the same time, with our research, we're looking at some consumable products like the animal feed, the grain side of things, because we're focusing on regenerative agriculture, and we really want to focus on how to utilize every part of this plant. And so there's so many unknowns and so much uncertainty right now that, I mean, people are saying, oh yeah, the industrial side is safe, but then you see different things out there that, well, but are the seeds safe? Are we going to be able to get seeds? And so I can't say 100% that we're safe, but I feel more confident on this side than being on the side that Rob and Candace are on there. But I do feel that both are equally important. And I think that, that research part of it is what I'm really excited about with Makoche, because we have that ability to really look at some regional studies specific to this area and identifying which varieties work best for that end product for housing and for the heating pellets. And to me, that is really important. And if this bill or any of the verbiage delays that, excuse me, then that could disrupt any of the research that we're doing. And we're also working with local producers in Pine Ridge that they also want to collaborate with us, but they also there's some that just want to do their own thing, and they do want to grow for the medicinal applications. They want to grow to make lotions and tinctures and things like that. And so, we're there to be a resource and add whatever input we can to the community around the policy and discussions, because right now we can't even legally get a license to cultivate on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation because there's no commission. And so what we had to do this year was to go through the USDA to get a license, a research license, and we had to do it in Nebraska, just right across the res line in White Clay. That was the closest that we could get there. So there's a lot of things and challenges that we're looking at and facing, and then to throw in this verbiage is just one more thing to take a look at.
You mentioned having to go to Nebraska. What about there on the reservation? Are there any ordinances that have to be considered through the Oglala Sioux tribe?
Yeah, so the ordinance that they did have in place was very, it was like 50-some pages long. And they've had struggles over the years with trying to get it amended. We had what I would call like a small work group of local producers that had made some recommendations. We worked with Eric Steenstra, who did the Rosebud Tribes Ordinance, and he had given us permission to amend that to fit Pine Ridge and just get that pushed through. And so we made that recommendation as a group. We've recommended going under the USDA until we can figure out what they're going to do, and it just seems to continue to get stalled. But hopefully the working group and our CEO will be able to push forth some sort of resolution. I mean, we have the documentation that needs to be, I guess, pushed forward through EB&D and or the tribe to go to the USDA. And I agree with, I think it was Candace or somebody else said, I mean, we want to exercise the sovereignty piece of it, but if we could have done that, we would have done that years ago there, and it's not happening. And so right now, with the producers, with us wanting to do our building materials, I mean, we could import and buy the hemp hurd all day long, but that's not really our ultimate goal. We want to be able to support the local producers that actually want to grow and have the land. And so without that ordinance or anything, our hands are kind of tied. But we have been supported by some of the tribal council that has told our working group, like, make it happen, let's do this. But what it boils down to is what we saw in a lot of states, whether it was tribes or just stateside, where they saw that the regulators, in order to support those positions, I mean, they just weren't making the money that they thought they were going to make on the industrial side. So instead of paying people $60,000 a year and paying some of those salaries, and I'm not saying that was there, but in some of these states, and then they don't even hand out any licenses or do anything, then they're just doing away with those regulators and then putting everybody under the USDA. And so we currently we don't, but we can do building material. So it's kind of the irony of it. Or we could grow our 6 cannabis plants because there is a cannabis commission.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier, because you folks are focused on the industrial side of the industry, non-consumables, you feel fairly safe with regard to these new restrictions and the potential for them to disrupt your business. But what about other tribes? I mean, are you familiar with anyone else who is also on the industrial side in other states, perhaps, and any challenges they're dealing with?
Yeah, I haven't, since that happened. I was up in D.C. with Rob and those guys when all of this verbiage was coming out. And so I haven't really talked to any of the others, but I am a part of an indigenous cannabis and hemp cooperative, farmers cooperative. And so we have like Winona LaDuke and from the Anishinaabe, and I know she's focused more on the industrial with the rope and fiber and things like that. And I can't speak for her or Danny, Danny from the Lower Sioux in Minnesota, same thing on the industrial side. I can't speak for what challenges that they are having, but I would venture to say that, again, it's all very similar to where we understand, because we've been seeing this coming. It's not been a shock. It was just the shock of the way it got pushed through and the timing of it, because I've been hearing it for the last couple of years. The industry has been wanting to separate out the cannabinoids or whatever you want to label it, the intoxicants, and let the large-scale ag farmers not have to worry about all that THC levels. Because imagine growing hundreds of acres and then just to have to turn around and destroy it because it goes over that threshold of THC, and then now, it becomes marijuana. And so, that's been a big hesitant part of these large-scale ag people wanting to jump in along with other things because of those percentage levels. And so I think, again, I just go back to just some of the stuff I was reading this morning, just on the seed part. I don't know enough to be concrete and say, yes, 100% we're okay, but I feel that that's not the intent through this bill. It's not to do away with the industrial side of it. It's to regulate, and sensible regulation is definitely welcomed. But I fear for those people that have really found some great, pain relief and everything else from those hemp-derived products, because I do feel there's some good actors out there.
Dion, tell me more about the benefits of hemp in housing and heating applications like you're doing.
Yeah, so with the heating application, the thing that I like specifically for the location that we're at is that this would help us eliminate the cutting down of the trees. I mean, there's a lot of people that are utilizing wood-burning stoves, and these trees are going to be depleted. I mean, I've heard some people talking by 2030 there would be a certain type of tree that would be depleted out here if they keep cutting it at that rate. And I understand there is a need for heat. I told a group this last week that I sat in a meeting where a tribal council meeting in last winter where they said over 200 family members in Pine Ridge were without electricity or heat, and this cold snap was coming through. And so, when we're able to identify the right cultivar variety for this region, and we go through that research and testing with our research partners, that we can show that, hey, when you grow this plant, if there happens to be toxic materials in the soil, because it does regenerate the soil and it's cleaning it up, what happens in that end product, in that pellet, in that stove? Is it putting off toxic chemicals? If so, then we don't want to make pellets out of those. And so it goes back to similarly like the COAs that we're talking about, from seed to sale or whatever. It's so important for that transparency to really know where these products are coming from. And people, I know I didn't think about it growing up about the molds in our houses until I started to get sick from them. And so that's the other piece that on the building material side, they're mold resistant, more fire resistant, if they're built right. And so I think those are key pieces. But the fact that we can grow this plant on average in 90 days and really just do it in our own region and create that circular economy, to me is really important. And we don't have to bring in and keep supporting the synthetic materials industries.
Dion, how optimistic are you with regard to the future of the hemp industry?
I feel bipolar, I can tell you that. It's 1 minute I'm feeling really good, and the next minute I'm like, man. And I think part of that for me is just, I just keep going back. The industrial side, I do feel really optimistic about that. There's still going to be a lot of challenges because I think on the scientific level, there's just a lot of either just misunderstanding or those people just aren't in the room in the policy discussions. And I think it's so important to have a variety of expertise and experience in the room as these policies are taking place. And at the same time, on the other side with the cannabinoids, it's scary. It's just like that, what is going to happen? And again, I do understand that there is a need to regulate that because we don't want to have people taking some harmful, I always tell my family, I don't want to bring snake oil to a community at all. And so those good actors and really getting to know the products. I liked hearing how Candace said, she knows where her distributor, she knows where her product is coming from. And it's so important for people to understand that because a lot of people don't.
Let's go back to Rob Perro now, founder and president of the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association. And Rob, I want to go back to this ban, and it's being the result of coming out of the bill to end the shutdown. Do you see any chance of changing the language in the legislation to something that is more acceptable to the industry?
Yeah, I never say never, but there needs to be a clear delineation, just like Dion said about if you're growing for industrial purposes, you should not be having to test, a 15, 20-foot crop that's grown for fiber for THC. So I think there needs to be modifications, and I think that's what you'll see kind of work through in the next year before everything is sort of cemented. But I don't see, them walking back, on specifically the loophole. So I think regulation is where we're heading, and it'll be, again, hopefully clear for both sides. The cannabinoid side, because CBD is a medicine, and Trump, even earlier this year, talked about integrating that into our U.S. medical sort of playbook. That we can access the CBD oil or the CBD from the plant. So we have to figure out a way to do it better, and I think that's what you'll see play out in the next year as the marching orders are there. I mean, we know what's happening, and now we as collectives, both on the fiber grain, we want to build homes with hemp, to we want full spectrum medicine. We have to figure out a way to do it right, and you're going to hear all those voices in the next year that hopefully can again be at the table.
Rob, what's your outlook on the native hemp economy, and how specifically have you seen hemp benefit tribes and tribal economies?
I think the sky is the limit for this plant, and specifically indigenous nations in the country still having a majority of the undeveloped agricultural land left, or the land that they do have is currently being leased out. So, looking at this as an agricultural commodity, I think is important. I think, and just sticking straight to hemp, and understanding that what it does for the environment, what it does for health benefits for communities, because this is such an early entry industry, it's still emerging. The fact that tribes can, again, regulate hemp just like they can anything else that is being sort of governed in their community gives them an advantage. And processing, even at a small local level, can provide almost immediate benefits, as you've heard from Dion and some of the work that's happening there, Prairie Band Ag or Lower Sioux, building homes, heating homes, providing, better quality, safer homes that are long-term, aren't, creating that mold and having that infestation of rodents and insects. So almost immediate, tribes can look at this as a way to build local economies while building an indigenous supply chain nationwide, which is the reason that the industrial hemp industry is still sort of stagnant. We do not have enough processing to support farmers growing mass acres of product.
Candace Thompson, I want to go to you. We have about a minute for closing comments. And I think a big part of this discussion here, it seems, is that there's still a lot of confusion among the general public with regard to what hemp is in regards to marijuana and some of these issues with THC. What do you think is the best way to educate the American public about what this industry is?
The best way, I guess, would be to go into these stores and speak to the workers, just out of curiosity. It also benefits pets or mammals too. And there's multiple ways of administration that you can take it. It's not just smoking or edibles. There's a lot of ways you can use it. And there are doctors out there that know how to dose too.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining the show today. Our guests were Candace Thompson, Dion Holmquist, Rob Perro, and Angie Wilson. We're out of time. We're going to wrap it up. But please join us again tomorrow for a look at tribal legal fights to improve access for hunting. I'm Sean Spruce. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Support provided by Amerind. Amerind is 100% tribally owned and partners with tribes and their businesses to provide affordable commercial insurance coverage, protect tribal sovereignty, and strengthen Native American communities by helping to keep dollars in Indian country. Information about property, liability, commercial auto, and workers' comp available at amerind.com. That's AMERIND.com.
Buju gikaganawain dagon jabwate shimago yen. Ganoje no kida ni shinabe akwazi wigamigung jigikendaman dawajge ijichigayan jabwate shimago yen gedudu shing. Nawaj jigikendaman mawadishawain healthcare.gov/coverage gema ganoj 1-800-318-2596. Gaunde Nagadeg, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
Native America Calling is produced in the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Kawanak Broadcast Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.